What will happen in the next few weeks, if we don't choose the off-ramp, is the physical destruction of a lot of the Gulf region and of the Middle East more generally, because the U.S. will rain missiles and bombs on Iran, and Iran will launch what it has against targets in the neighborhood to show deterrence, and hoping that that deterrence will stop something.
So Tucker Carlson just dropped a bombshell warning about potential economic collapse if Trump escalates with Iran. And this isn't typical punditry. This analysis comes from Jeffrey Sachs, who literally wrote the book on 1970s stagflation. We're talking permanent infrastructure destruction versus temporary supply disruptions. Let's break this down.
And what will happen in a short period of time is not a closure of shipping, but a destruction of the physical capacities of providing the oil and the gas and the fertilizers and the petrochemicals and the other very core commodities for the world economy.
This distinction is crucial. The 1970s oil shocks were flow disruptions, like turning off a tap. Iran's retaliation would target refineries, pipelines, and production facilities directly. Think about Ukraine's energy grid attacks, but applied to the world's oil heartland. Once infrastructure is destroyed, rebuilding takes years, not months.
You might need to shut off 20% of the world oil supply, and that by enough will send the prices soaring, make Americans really suffer across the board, because it's not only at the gas pump and not only in the utility bills, but also in the cost of food, which will soar from this as well, because there will be a worldwide disruption of food supplies coming from this, because we're a very significant proportion of the urea, which underpins the nitrogen-based fertilizers of the world, come from this region.
The numbers here are staggering. The Gulf produces 40% of global fertilizer exports. And when oil spiked to $147 in 2008, food riots erupted across 30 countries. A 20% supply shock could triple oil prices overnight, making the 2022 inflation surge look mild by comparison.
What happened in 1973-74 when there was an oil embargo, and then in 1979-80, when there was the Iranian Revolution, was a big disruption of oil supplies. It sent oil prices soaring, and it sent the world economy into a tailspin. And it was a very particular kind of tailspin, because people lost their jobs, incomes went down, and inflation soared at the same time. And so you had an economic downturn and a rise of inflation, which at the time was viewed as a paradox, because usually you have a recession and the prices calm down, or you have a boom and the prices accelerate. But this was a contraction and an inflation.
So people had less money coming in and everything cost more to buy.
That's it. And that's what was called stagflation.
Sachs literally predicted the 1970s crisis in his PhD dissertation and advised over 100 governments through similar shocks. Back then, oil went from $3 to $12 per barrel. Unemployment hit 9% and inflation peaked at 14%. But those were temporary supply cuts, not permanent infrastructure destruction.
Asking the Federal Reserve a few days ago for emergency swap lines that may be needed in the event of a crisis. This is kind of shocking because, first of all, the Emirates you think of as super rich.
Yeah,
it's the place where rich people go to put their money in the region.
The UAE requesting Federal Reserve swap lines is the financial equivalent of a fire alarm. This is a country with $1.4 trillion in sovereign wealth funds asking for emergency dollar access. When the regional financial hub starts preparing for capital flight, global markets should be terrified.
It's a complete disaster for them, what's happened, but they are girding for the downstream effects of what I'm talking about, which is that first you get the physical destruction, then you get the real economy, so-called, the actual physical production of industrial products, of employment in the manufacturing sector and cascading across the economy, having huge negative consequences. But then you get the financial effects because people say, oh, well, is this place viable anymore? I'm withdrawing my money. But the Emirates operates on a U.S.-backed dollar standard, and suddenly you have a run on your banks. You have a run on your financial markets. So they're already asking, can we have emergency lines of credit? And maybe yes, maybe no. But that's the tip of the iceberg of the financial consequences that can come from all of this.
He's outlining a 3-stage collapse: physical destruction, real economy contraction, then financial contagion. The UAE operates as a dollar-dependent financial hub for the entire region. A run on Emirati banks would cascade through every emerging market with dollar-denominated debt. That's most of the developing world.
One of the things, for example, that happened in the 1973-74 oil shock was that there was also an El Nino that year. I'm remembering. And it was the combination that sent food prices soaring worldwide. And if we have that dual combination, I've been saying to myself for years, the next big El Nino or super El Nino is by itself going to be world destabilizing, because there are a lot of countries on the edge right now, on the edge financially, on the edge socially.
El Nino cycles typically spike global food prices 15 to 30% through drought and flooding. The 2015-16 Super El Nino contributed to political upheaval from Brazil to Southeast Asia. Countries like Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Lebanon are already on the edge of currency collapse and social unrest.
But if you combine a mass destruction in West Asia, the Gulf, the Eastern Mediterranean, with a super El Nino, I don't even know. Somebody's going to have to write the next book quickly about this, because we would not have had a shock like that since World War II, certainly. And the effects on political destabilization, on the effects of governments falling, the potential cascading of this war would be tremendous and uncontrollable.
Remember, the 2008 financial crisis triggered the Arab Spring through food price inflation. Economic collapse doesn't stay contained, it topples governments. We're potentially looking at cascading state failures across the Middle East, North Africa, and economically fragile regions worldwide.
In addition to everything else, a naval fleet from China is heading towards the Gulf right now. It's heading towards the Gulf to escort Chinese vessels, or I don't know if it's only Chinese flagged or vessels heading to China to give them military escort.
Chinese naval escorts in the Persian Gulf means two nuclear powers potentially confronting each other in the world's most critical shipping choke point. The Strait of Hormuz handles 21% of global petroleum liquids. Any military incident there could trigger immediate market panic.
But we're just lighting fuses that could blow up everything if we choose the ramp of escalation. And I think it will go faster than we imagine and without control.
This connects to the broader Tucker-Trump foreign policy split we're seeing. Modern economic systems are so interconnected that regional conflicts can trigger global financial contagion in days, not months. The fuses are shorter and the explosions bigger than previous generations faced.
Oh, what are we doing with all of this gamble when the whole premise of this war was wrong? And when the tactical premise that this was a one-day operation was proved wrong by the second day, why are we still facing this possibility of complete disaster?
The core question remains: Why risk global economic collapse over a conflict that's already proven unwinnable? This represents exactly the kind of principled foreign policy critique that's defined the populist right's challenge to establishment warmongering. Economic nationalism means avoiding stupid wars.